They say small towns are safe, quiet, the kind of places where nothing bad ever happens. But that's a lie. Behind the friendly smiles and old churches, there are secrets, dark ones. I thought moving to a small town would give me peace, until I realized everyone already knew my name. Stay with me, because once you hear what really happens in places like this, you'll never look at small towns the same way again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because these stories will keep you awake tonight. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just a coincidence. I'd barely driven into town when the old gas station attendant squinted at me through the glass and said, "Welcome back, Daniel." My name slid out of his mouth so casually that I froze. I hadn't told him who I was. My license plate wasn't personalized. I'd never been here before. I laughed awkwardly and said he must have mistaken me for someone else. But he just shook his head, smiling too wide, and rang me up for the gas. The whole time, I could feel his eyes following me like he was watching an old friend come home. That should have been enough to turn my car around. But I'd just signed a rental agreement for a little house on the edge of town, desperate to get away from the city. Too many mistakes, too many things I wanted to leave behind. Small-town life felt like the answer. Cheap, quiet, safe. When I got to the house, a woman from across the street waved. "Daniel," she called out. Not hi, not hello. She used my name. I raised a hand, uneasy. "Do I know you?" She just smiled. "Of course you do. Everybody knows you here." That night I couldn't shake it. The way she said it wasn't playful, it wasn't teasing. It was certain, like I'd always lived here. The next morning, I stopped at the diner for breakfast. Before I could order, the waitress, middle-aged, wearing a faded uniform, put a plate down in front of me. "Pancakes, bacon, black coffee, just how you like it," she said. I stared at her. "I didn't order this," she smiled warmly. "You always order this." I didn't touch the food. By the third day, the whole town had joined in. The mailman greeted me by name. Kids riding bikes shouted, "Hi, Daniel," as if I were some neighborhood uncle. Even the sheriff tipped his hat and said, "Good to see you again." I started asking questions. "How do you know me? When did I live here? Are you sure you've got the right person?" The answers were always the same, with that same eerie certainty. "You've always been here." I tried to call a friend back in the city, just to anchor myself, but every time I dialed, the line cut out. When I finally got through, the voice on the other end wasn't his. It was mine, my own voice, saying, "Stay." I dropped the phone and didn't try again. At night, I heard noises outside the house, the crunch of snow under boots, low voices murmuring. One night I looked out the window and saw them, half the town standing in a circle around my house, not moving, just staring up at the windows. I didn't sleep. The next day I confronted the sheriff. He leaned back in his chair, hands folded over his belly. "What's the problem, Daniel?" "I'm not from here," I snapped. "I just moved in last week. You people don't know me." The sheriff's smile didn't falter. "Of course you are. You've been here your whole life. You'll be here your whole life." When I stood to leave, he said something that froze me in place. "You can't leave again." Again, I packed that night. I didn't care about the lease, the deposit, any of it. I stuffed everything into my trunk and drove until the tank was almost empty. But the highway didn't end. No matter how far I went, the same wooden welcome sign appeared in my headlights again and again. "Welcome to Pine Hollow. Population 1,482. Every loop back into town made me sicker. The gas station, the diner, the sheriff's office, all exactly where they'd been. Only this time, people were waiting for me. The sheriff stood by the sign, hands folded. The waitress was next to him. The kids on their bikes. The woman from across the street. All of them smiling. "Welcome back, Daniel," they said together. I slammed the brakes, heart hammering, and backed up fast. But when I turned the car around, they were behind me too. A wall of faces, smiling, unblinking. I left the car and ran into the woods, branches tearing at my clothes, lungs burning in the cold air. I don't know how long I ran before collapsing. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in bed. My bed. In the house. The sheets smelled like smoke. My clothes from the night before were folded neatly on the chair. I stumbled to the mirror and almost screamed. My hair was shorter, my face thinner. My reflection didn't look like me, not exactly. It looked like a version of me that had been living here for years. Outside, I could hear them gathering again. The crunch of boots in the snow, the murmur of voices. I don't know how long I've been here anymore. Days? Weeks? Months? But every time I try to leave, I end up back in the same bed. And every time I look in the mirror, my reflection looks a little more like them. And I think soon, it won't be me at all. I noticed it the first night I moved back. There's only one gas station in our small town, and it's been there longer than anyone can remember. The sign is rusted, the pumps are ancient, and the lights hum like they're ready to burn out. I pulled in late, needing fuel after the long drive. And that's when I saw him, the attendant. He was standing behind the counter, stiff as a mannequin, his eyes locked on me through the glass before I even opened the door. He didn't move, didn't nod, didn't even twitch, just stared. When I walked in, the smell hit me first. Gasoline and something sour, like rotting fruit. The place was dead silent except for the buzzing lights overhead. He rang me up without speaking, sliding the receipt across the counter with mechanical precision. That's when I noticed it. His eyes, he didn't blink, not once while I paid. Not once while I fumbled with my wallet. He just kept those wide, watery eyes pinned to me, unbroken, like he'd forgotten blinking was a thing people did. I left fast, the hairs on my neck prickling. In the rear-view mirror, I saw him through the window, still staring. The next morning, I asked my mom about him over breakfast. She shrugged. "That's just Howard. He's been running that place forever. Quiet type." But it wasn't just that. The next few nights I drove by after work, and every time I looked, he was there, standing at the counter, eyes locked on whoever was inside, frozen like a wax figure. I started timing him. One night I parked across the street and just watched. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. His eyes never closed. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he had a medical condition. Maybe it was just my imagination. But then it started getting worse. One night when I stopped for gas again, the station was empty. No customers, just him. He watched me pump my gas unblinking, face pressed almost to the glass. I refused to look up, but I could feel it, the weight of those eyes. When I finally glanced at the door, I nearly dropped the nozzle. He was outside. He hadn't opened the door. I never heard it swing. One second he was behind the counter, the next he was leaning against the pump beside me, eyes wide, not blinking, not breathing. I stumbled back, mumbling some excuse about being in a hurry, and got in my car. My hands shook on the wheel. I didn't even bother screwing the cap back on. As I pulled away, I checked the mirror again. He was back inside, behind the counter, watching me drive away. After that, I couldn't avoid it anymore. I started asking around. My friends, old neighbors, anyone who'd lived here long enough, everyone gave the same response. A shrug, a chuckle. "That's just Howard." No one seemed bothered by the fact that he never blinked. No one else noticed, or maybe they chose not to. I tried to push it down until the night my car broke down. It was just past midnight on a back road. My phone had no signal. The only place open was the gas station. I walked half a mile through the freezing dark until the lights buzzed ahead of me like a beacon. Inside, it was empty again. Just him. His eyes found me instantly, like he'd been waiting. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. Car broke down. Mind if I use the phone? He didn't move, didn't speak. Just tilted his head slightly, still staring. I walked toward the counter. My boots squeaked on the linoleum. He slid the phone across the surface without breaking eye contact. Old rotary phone, dust covering the cord. My hands shook as I dialed home. The line was dead, nothing but static. That's when I realized I couldn't hear anything else. No humming lights. No distant traffic. No sound of my own breathing. Just static hissing in the receiver. When I looked up, he was closer, standing right in front of me. Too close. His eyes were so wide I could see the red veins spiderwebbing through them. But still, not blinking. I dropped the phone and stumbled back. My chest tightened, panic flooding me. The door was only 10 feet away. I bolted, slamming into the glass so hard it rattled in the frame. It didn't budge. Locked. When I turned, he was inches away. I could smell him. Sour. Damp. Like something that had been left in the dark too long. His lips twitched like he wanted to smile but didn't know how, and then, finally, he blinked. Just once. A slow, dragging shudder of eyelids like they hadn't closed in years. The lights flickered out. When I woke up, it was morning. I was in my car, parked in front of my mom's house. The gas station receipt was sitting on the dashboard with today's date. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember leaving the station, and last night I dreamed of him, standing by my bed, wide eyes, watching, never blinking. This morning, when I looked in the mirror, I realized I hadn't blinked once while brushing my teeth, and I wasn't even trying to. The flyer stopped me cold before I even touched the grocery store door. At first glance, it looked like any other missing notice. Cheap printer paper, taped to the glass with curling edges, the usual bold black letters, missing. But then I saw the photo. My photo. Same jacket I was wearing that day. Same haircut. Same face. For a second, my brain refused to process it. I actually looked down at myself, then back at the flyer like maybe I was misreading it. But there it was, printed in thick black type underneath the picture. Daniel Carter. Last seen 2 days ago. My stomach turned. I yanked the flyer off the glass and stormed inside. The cashier, a teenager barely paying attention, glanced at me while popping gum. "Where'd this come from?" I demanded. She shrugged. "Sheriff dropped a stack off yesterday. Said post 'em everywhere." I shoved the paper toward her. "This is me. I'm not missing." She gave me a strange look, the kind that lasts a second too long, then smirked. "Guess they found you then." I left the store shaking. As I drove home, I saw them everywhere. On lampposts, on bulletin boards, taped to stop signs. All of them with my face, my name, my details. Some already weathered by the cold, others still crisp. I pulled straight into the sheriff's lot and marched inside. He was behind the desk, hat tipped back, toothpick hanging from his mouth like always. I slapped the flyer down. This is me. I'm not missing. What the hell is this? The sheriff looked at it, then looked at me. His expression never changed. Daniel Carter's been missing 2 days. Folks are worried. I slammed my hand on the desk. "I'm Daniel Carter." He leaned back slow, eyes narrowing just a bit. "That's funny." The other one said the same thing. A chill spread through me like ice water down my back. "The other one?" I asked. He didn't answer. Just pushed the flyer back across the desk and said, "You ought to get home. Been a long week." I barely remember leaving his office. My head felt like it was splitting open. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw another flyer taped to my front door. But this one wasn't like the others. Someone had written across it in thick black marker, "Found." I ripped it down and bolted inside, locking every door and window. My hands shook so bad I dropped my phone twice before dialing my mom's number. It rang once, then cut to static. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. At first, just heavy breathing. Then a voice. My voice. "Don't fight it." I dropped the phone. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled to the window. Outside, across the street, a figure stood in the shadows between two houses. Even from that distance, I knew. It was me, same face, same jacket, same everything. He was holding something in his hands, and when he lifted it, the porch light caught it. A stack of flyers. One by one, he began taping them to the stop sign. My face over and over, grinning like he was proud of his work. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Finally, he stopped. Turned. Even in the dark, I could see his smile. He lifted one flyer and pressed it flat against his chest, like he was claiming it. Like he was claiming me. My phone buzzed again on the floor. The same unknown number flashing across the screen. I didn't pick it up. I already knew what I'd hear. And I knew, no matter what I did, the next flyer wouldn't say, "missing." It would say, "replaced." The first thing I noticed when I moved back was that Mrs. Holloway looked exactly the same. I left my small town at 18 and swore I'd never come back. College, work, city life. It was all messy, but it kept me away from the place I grew up. But after my dad died, I had no choice but to come back and settle his affairs. The old family house sat empty, dust collecting in corners, the kind of silence that feels too thick to breathe. On my second night there, I walked out to grab something from the car. That's when I saw her, Mrs. Holloway, my neighbor since childhood. She was standing on her porch across the street. Same gray house, same rocking chair. And she looked exactly the way I remembered her when I was 10 years old. Same face, same posture, same long braid trailing over her shoulder. Not older, not weaker. Exactly the same. At first, I thought it was just memory playing tricks on me. But the longer I looked, the more certain I became. She hadn't aged a day. She lifted her hand and waved slowly, smile stretching across her face. I waved back, hesitant, before hurrying inside. The next day, I asked my mom about her. "She must be 90 by now," I said. "But she doesn't. She doesn't look 90. My mom didn't look up from her tea. "That's just Mrs. Holloway, always kept to herself. Don't think too hard about it." But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started watching her house. Every evening she sat on that porch rocking gently. Sometimes humming to herself, though I couldn't make out the tune. Sometimes I swore her lips were moving like she was whispering names. She never seemed to leave. I never saw lights turn on or off. Never saw anyone visit, just her, watching, always smiling. One night after a couple drinks, I worked up the nerve to cross the street. I knocked on her door. It creaked open on its own. The smell hit me first. Damp wood, mildew, something sour like old fruit. The living room was dark, filled with heavy furniture that looked like it hadn't moved in decades. And then she appeared in the hallway. "Same face, same smile. Daniel," she said softly. "You came back." Her voice was the same, too. Smooth. Too smooth. "How do you—" I started, but my throat locked. "I've always known you," she said, stepping closer. Her eyes didn't blink. Not once. I muttered an excuse about checking in and backed out quickly. The moment I hit the street, I felt her eyes on me like hooks dragging across my skin. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Perfect. Unchanged. The next morning, I went to the library. Dug up old yearbooks, old town photos. There she was, over and over in pictures from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Always the same face, always the same braid over her shoulder. While everyone else around her changed, aged, died, she stayed the same. That evening I drove past her house. She was still on the porch, rocking slowly, humming her tune. But this time, she wasn't alone. Kids stood around her feet. I thought maybe she'd invited neighbors over. But when I slowed down, I felt the blood drain from my face. I recognized them. Kids who'd gone missing years ago. Faces I'd seen on flyers pinned up in the grocery store, news clippings that haunted the town. They were all there, standing silently around her chair, pale, blank-eyed, still. I pressed the gas and sped away, refusing to look in the mirror. That night I woke to the sound of creaking wood, the old rocking chair sound. But it wasn't outside. It was in my living room. I crept down the stairs, heart pounding. The air was thick with that same sour smell. And there she was, Mrs. Holloway, sitting in a chair that wasn't hers, rocking slowly, smiling wide in the dark. "You're home now," she whispered. "You won't leave again." Behind her, in the shadows, something shifted. Small figures, still and silent, watching. I ran before I could see their faces. I locked myself in the upstairs bedroom and didn't move until morning. When I finally opened the door, the house was empty. No smell. No chair, nothing. But taped to my front door was an old faded photograph. Black and white. A group of children standing in front of a schoolhouse. My dad was in it, my mom. And in the center, smiling with that same braid over her shoulder, was Mrs. Holloway. The photo was dated 1948. She looked exactly the same. Now, every night, I hear it again. The slow creak of a rocking chair in my living room, even though there's nothing there when I check. I close my eyes and try to ignore it, but it always gets louder. And sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the window, I swear there's someone standing behind me, smiling. I wasn't even supposed to be at the meeting. I'd only been living in the town for 3 weeks. It was one of those places that wasn't on most maps. One main road, 2 diners, and a general store that still sold penny candy. I moved there to get away from people. No drama, no noise, just peace. So when the note appeared in my mailbox, handwritten and sealed in red wax, I was confused. It simply said, "Mandatory Town Meeting, Community Hall, Friday, midnight." Midnight? That wasn't normal. I asked my neighbor about it, Mrs. Dell, an older woman who barely spoke, but she just nodded slowly and said, "Everyone goes." Friday came. And despite every instinct telling me not to, I went. The hall was already full when I arrived. Wooden benches arranged in tight rows, the air thick and still. There were no side conversations, no laughter. Everyone just sat silently, facing forward, hands folded, until I walked in. Every single head turned toward me at once. No smiles, no greetings. Just stares, unblinking, like they'd been waiting for me. A man near the front waved me forward. "We saved you a seat." My stomach dropped. It was the only empty chair in the entire hall, dead center in the front row. I walked down the aisle, hundreds of eyes following me. When I sat, the door creaked closed behind me, even though no one was near it. Then the lights dimmed. A man stepped onto the stage. Tall, thin, gray suit. He didn't introduce himself, didn't even look at anyone else. His eyes locked on me. "Tonight," he said, "we welcome our newest resident." The crowd remained silent. Not a breath, not a cough, he continued. "For generations this town has survived because of unity, because of sacrifice. And now, the time has come again." I raised my hand, voice shaky. "I think there's been some mistake." "No mistake," he interrupted, eyes still fixed on me. "You were chosen." Whispers rippled through the crowd, but no one looked away. "Chosen for what?" I asked, but no one answered. The man snapped his fingers. Two people emerged from the shadows, wearing long black robes, faces hidden. They wheeled out an old wooden box carved with strange symbols. The air in the room shifted, heavy. "Electric. Stand," the man ordered. I didn't move. He didn't repeat himself. He didn't have to. Two people beside me grabbed my arms and pulled me up. Inside the box was a book, old, leather-bound, sealed with a strap. The robed figures opened it and handed me a pen. "Sign your name," the man said. "I'm not signing anything," I snapped. He tilted his head. "Then you won't leave." I laughed nervously. "What, is this some cult thing?" "You can't keep me here." He just smiled. I turned to leave. The door was gone, just a wall. Smooth, solid wood where the exit had been. I spun around. "Where's the door?" No one moved. "Where is the door?" The man stepped forward, placing the book on the podium. "This is your home now." "But home requires commitment." I backed away, heart pounding. The crowd began to rise, one by one. Still staring, still silent. That's when I realized they weren't blinking. None of them. Not once since I'd arrived. I ran down the aisle, searching for any exit. Windows wouldn't budge. The stage had no back door. I turned to face the crowd. Every one of them had taken a step forward, in unison. Then another, and another. I pressed myself into the corner of the hall as they closed in, chanting now, low and rhythmic. The man's voice echoed above them. "Sign the book, or stay forgotten." I don't remember blacking out. When I woke up, I was in my bed. Morning light through the window. Birds chirping like nothing happened. I ran outside, half expecting to see the town in flames. But everything was normal. Kids riding bikes. A couple walking their dog. I checked the community hall. Doors locked. No signs of any meeting. I convinced myself it was a nightmare. Maybe stress. Maybe sleepwalking until I checked my mailbox. Inside was a letter. No return address. Same red wax seal. Inside, a single sentence. "You forgot to sign." He said it with a smile. "You won't be leaving, son." Not alive anyway. I thought he was joking. It was my third day in town. I had just parked outside the diner when he slapped a ticket on my windshield. Not even a warning. No greeting. Just that low drawl, a smirk, and those words. At first, I chalked it up to small-town weirdness. I'd moved here to get away from city chaos. Bought a rundown house cheap off an auction site. Quiet streets, old brick buildings, a general store that still used a cash register from the 50s. It all felt frozen in time. But that sheriff? He didn't feel like a piece of the past. He felt like something watching from under it. The next day, I saw him again, leaning on his cruiser outside the post office. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just watched me walk past with the same dead grin. I nodded politely. He didn't nod back. Later that week, I stopped for gas. When I walked into the station to pay, he was standing at the coffee machine, stirring an empty cup. No coffee, just a spoon scraping metal. Slowly, over and over. "You settling in all right?" he asked without looking up. "Trying to," I replied. "You'll see," he said. "Towns like this, they remember." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't ask. That night I found a dead crow nailed to my porch. I figured it was a sick prank. Maybe someone didn't like outsiders. I filed a report. The sheriff took it personally, showed up at my house instead of sending a deputy. Stood in my living room, muddy boots soaking into my rug. "Some folks don't like change," he said, glancing around like he already knew every inch of the place. "Some folks don't like leaving either." Then he leaned in. If I were you, I wouldn't make plans to go anywhere. That was the first time I truly felt fear. I asked around. Everyone knew him. No one talked about him. Every time I mentioned his name, people went quiet. One woman at the grocery store, maybe in her 70s, whispered, "Just keep your head down." I stopped trying to get friendly after that. 2 days later, I woke up to find my tires slashed. All four, clean, even cuts. No footprints, no fingerprints. I didn't even bother calling the sheriff this time. I knew who did it. I borrowed a neighbor's car and drove toward the next county. Just needed to clear my head. I barely made it 6 miles before a cruiser came flying out of the trees, lights off, forced me off the road. The front of the car crumpled into a ditch, airbag in my face, blood in my mouth. I looked up, and there he was, the sheriff, walking slow, calm. He tapped the hood. "What'd I say, son?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Then he left. No arrest, no ticket. Just turned around and disappeared into the woods. I limped back into town before sunrise. I tried calling the state police. No signal. Tried from a landline. Disconnected. That night, I heard someone walking outside my house. Heavy boots crunching gravel, no knock. Just pacing, circling. I stayed inside all night with the lights off. When I finally opened the door at dawn, a single bullet was sitting on my doormat. Polished. Clean. Standing upright. That was 4 days ago. Now, I don't leave the house. I watch from the window. His cruiser is always there, somewhere. Down the street, parked behind the church, half hidden in alleyways. Always watching. And last night I saw him in my yard. He wasn't doing anything. Just standing there in the dark, hat low, eyes catching the light. He raised a hand and pointed, not at the house, but at me, at the exact window I was behind. I didn't sleep. This morning, I found another ticket on my windshield. No reason listed. Just one word, scrawled in red ink. Stay. I think he's waiting for me to run again. I think if I do, I won't survive the second time. So I'm writing this in case I disappear. If you find this house empty, if you hear that someone vanished without a trace, check with the sheriff. Just don't expect the truth. And whatever you do, don't try to leave. It started the day I tried to leave. I packed everything I owned into my car, tossed the keys to the landlord, and took one last look at the crumbling apartment I'd rented for almost a year. Small-town life wasn't for me. I'd taken a job here thinking I needed peace, but all I'd found was silence that felt heavy. Too many locked doors. Too many people who smiled without blinking. I turned the ignition and drove out of town. The streets were quiet, just like always. I passed the diner, the hardware store, the church with its faded white paint. Then the last street sign, Everwood Lane. I didn't look back. I kept driving. 20 minutes. 30. Forest blurred past on either side. My GPS stopped updating, so I relied on memory. One long stretch of road into the next. Then, suddenly, I saw it. Everwood Lane. Again. I thought maybe I'd taken a wrong turn somewhere, that these roads all look the same. Small towns blend into themselves. But when I pulled into the intersection, I realized it wasn't similar. It was the same cracked pavement, the same church, the same flickering diner sign. I had looped back. I turned the car around and took another exit. Drove south this time, deeper into the woods. No phone signal. No signs, no turns. Just one long road until I saw it again. Everwood Lane. My chest tightened. I didn't stop this time. I drove past it fast. Just kept going. An hour, maybe more. Until the forest thinned and the town came back into view, I slammed on the brakes. Same diner. Same church. Same faded mural on the side of the gas station. I was back. Every road led me back. I got out of the car, dizzy with panic, and walked into the sheriff's office. "I can't get out," I said, breathless. "I keep driving and ending up on the same street." The sheriff didn't look surprised. He just leaned forward and said, "It's not the roads, it's the town." "What does that mean?" He tapped the side of his mug. "It keeps who it wants." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. When I didn't answer, he added, "Might be best if you just settle in." Folks eventually stopped trying. I left. I spent the next day studying maps. Physical ones, digital ones, old and new. I tried walking out. I made it 3 miles before I hit the town's edge again, this time from the opposite side. It was like the town folded in on itself, like it breathed. I drove in loops for days, running low on gas and hope. I even tried taking the old railroad tracks once, thinking if I followed the metal long enough I'd break free. But the tracks curved, always curved, and when I looked up again, Everwood Lane. I started seeing less people. Streets that were busy now stood empty. Businesses I swore were open just days ago now looked abandoned. Dust covering windows. Signs missing letters. It was like the town had noticed I was trying to leave, and it didn't like it. On the 6th day, I heard knocking at my door around 3 a.m. I looked through the peephole. It was me. Not someone who looked like me. Me. Same jacket, same eyes, same tired expression. He didn't knock again. He just smiled and walked away. The next morning, the roads were even quieter. No kids, no dogs barking. Just fog and cold pavement. I drove one last time. I didn't care what street I was on. I just pressed the gas and followed the road until it broke apart into gravel. I kept going until the trees closed in so tight it barely felt like road anymore. And then, Everwood Lane. This time, there was no town. Just the sign. Just the road, and the sound of someone walking behind my car. I turned around. No one there. But my reflection was in the rearview mirror, grinning. Not matching my own expression, grinning wide. I blinked, and the town was back. The street. The diner. The church. The same people now watching from their porches. And when I looked down, my hands weren't on the steering wheel. I was standing on the side of the road, watching someone else drive, someone who looked like me. And the road sign read something different now. Welcome home, Daniel. I first noticed it on my 3rd day in town. I was walking to the general store when I passed a group of kids standing at the corner near the old post office. There were 5 of them, maybe 6 to 10 years old, all just standing still, lined up like they were waiting for something. When I walked by, one of them raised their arm slowly and pointed at me. The others followed. None of them said a word. I gave an awkward smile and kept walking. Kids are weird, I figured. Maybe it was some local joke. But when I turned around at the end of the block, they were still pointing. All of them. Still silent. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I saw another group near the diner. 3 girls this time, huddled near a bench. One looked directly at me, eyes wide and glassy. No blinking, no smile. Just that same slow, mechanical point. I froze in place. "Hey," I said. "You kids okay?" Nothing. They didn't speak. Didn't move. Just pointed. The waitress from the diner came out with a to-go box and noticed me staring. She followed my gaze and sighed. "You're new, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "What's with the kids?" She handed me my order and said quietly, They don't talk anymore. Haven't for years. I laughed, thinking she was messing with me. What, none of them? Her face didn't change. Not a single one, just, don't follow when they point. I tried asking around. Everyone gave me the same vague answers. They're just like that. Best to ignore them. It's not your business. But it was hard to ignore when I saw them everywhere. In the park. Outside the school. On my street. Always standing still. Always pointing. Always at me. And it wasn't just one group. It was different kids each time. Different clothes, different faces, but the same expression. Blank. Hollow. They never blinked. I tried filming them once just to prove I wasn't losing it. The moment I raised my phone, the kid closest to me dropped his arm. The others followed. They turned their heads in sync and walked away. When I checked the footage, it was corrupted. Black screen. That night I saw them outside my house. 7 of them. Standing in my front yard, just past the mailbox. They were perfectly still. When I peeked through the blinds, their arms rose, slow, deliberate, and pointed directly at my window. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't go outside. I sat in the dark until morning. By the time the sun came up, they were gone. I drove to the edge of town that day, thinking I'd clear my head. About 30 minutes out, my engine died. No warning, just sputtered to silence. I popped the hood, tried everything, but it wouldn't turn over. I called for a tow. The dispatcher told me they'd send someone. While I waited, I sat on the hood and stared at the tree line. That's when I saw them. Half a dozen kids standing just beyond the trees, barely visible through the branches. Pointing. Tow truck never showed. I walked 5 miles back into town. When I reached my street, there were more flyers stapled to the power poles. Old missing child posters, all dated from 20 or 30 years ago. Same names, same faces, same blank eyes. One of them looked like a boy I'd seen near the gas station just 2 days ago. I tore the flyer down and brought it to the sheriff's office. He didn't even glance at it. "You shouldn't look too closely at things," he said, sipping coffee. "Especially around here." "Those kids are missing," I said. "But they're still walking around." The sheriff leaned back and said, "Are they?" I left. That night, they were back. In my yard again, closer this time. One stood right at the front door, finger pressed to the glass. Not knocking. Not moving, just pressing. I couldn't breathe. I didn't move, then I blinked, and he was gone. The next morning, there was a new flyer on my door. My face, my name. Missing. I packed a bag. I was done. I was leaving. Screw the car, screw everything. I'd walk if I had to. I made it 3 blocks before I saw them again. Dozens now, lining both sides of the street, all pointing, all watching. I turned around. They followed. Not running, not shouting, just walking behind me, arms out, pointing, closing in slowly. I ran. I didn't care who saw. When I got back to my house, I locked every door, every window. I sat in the hallway with a kitchen knife, listening to the quiet. They didn't knock, they didn't break in. But somehow, around midnight, I fell asleep, and when I woke up, my front door was wide open. The knife was gone. And outside, the children stood shoulder to shoulder on my lawn, not pointing this time, just waiting. When I woke up that morning, the silence was the first thing that hit me. Not the kind of peaceful quiet you get after a storm, or early on a Sunday. This was wrong, like the world had hit mute. No birds, no wind, no tires on gravel. Just a thick, smothering stillness that pressed into my skull like cotton stuffed in my ears. I live in a town called Corbin Hollow. Population 483, give or take. You can count the businesses on one hand. A diner, a gas station, 2 churches, and a liquor store with a broken neon sign that flickers even when it's unplugged. That morning, the neon didn't flicker. I stepped outside in my hoodie and slippers, holding a lukewarm mug of gas station coffee. My porch creaked, but nothing else did. The street was empty. No Mrs. Lively watering her planters. No Hank scraping frost off his windshield before heading to the mill. Just me. And the air smelled wrong, like rain that never came. I walked to Main Street, thinking maybe a parade or something had pulled everyone downtown, but even the diner was locked. I banged on the glass, no answer. The open sign buzzed weakly, half lit. I tried calling people. No signal. I tried the sheriff's office. Door wide open. Radio silent. Mug of coffee still steaming on the desk like someone had just stepped out. But no one was there. That was the pattern everywhere I checked. The doors weren't locked. Food sat on plates. TVs flickered. Trucks idled with the keys in the ignition. But no people. Not even pets. Just gone. Like someone had lifted the population straight out of their clothes. I stood in the middle of Main Street and screamed. Nothing. I'm not the type to panic easily, but by noon I was tearing through houses like a lunatic. I thought maybe it was a prank or a drill. Something. I even looked for notes, anything. But the calendars were all on today's date. Clocks were ticking. Eggs frying on stoves. Still no one. Around 3 p.m., the power went out. That's when the silence changed. It wasn't just lack of noise anymore. It was like something settled in, like something noticed I was alone. By sunset, shadows stretched farther than they should have. I stood at the edge of my yard and saw my own silhouette twist and stretch across the gravel like a rubber band. It touched the woods. Then it bent, as if it saw something I couldn't. I slammed the door shut and bolted every lock. That night I tried to sleep with a baseball bat next to me. I heard something dragging across the porch around midnight. Not walking, dragging, like bare feet, too heavy to lift. I didn't look. I couldn't. I lay frozen under my quilt, the air in my lungs cold and thick. My heart pounded loud enough to echo off the walls. At 2:17 a.m., every light in town flickered back on. Then off again. Then on. I watched from the window as street lamps buzzed to life one by one in a perfect line down Main Street, like something was walking beneath them, triggering them in order. But there was no one visible, just a path of light growing closer. Then the last light on my street turned on, and stayed on. The dragging sound started again. This time it came from my backyard. I hid in the closet like a child. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. I woke up to daylight pouring through the blinds. Everything was still again. I thought maybe I'd hallucinated all of it, that some kind of gas leak had made me crazy. But then I walked outside, and the mailbox was filled with letters. Not mine. Not bills or flyers or anything normal. Each envelope was thick, sealed with wax and had no stamp. Just my name in looping cursive. Inside each one was a Polaroid. Of me. Sleeping. In my bed. In my closet. In my shower. All from angles I couldn't explain. Some of them were dated, days before the town disappeared. That's when I noticed the writing on the back of the last photo. In that same perfect cursive, "You were the last one to believe this town was real." I don't know what that means, but I haven't found another human being since. The highways loop back into Corbin Hollow no matter which direction I take. I've filled my truck's tank 5 times and I always end up back here, same diner, same porch, same flickering liquor sign, Sometimes the power comes back. Sometimes the shadows stretch. Every night, I hear something dragging its limbs across the porch. I still haven't opened the front door after dark. The scariest part? The Polaroids keep coming. I burn them. Every time. And every morning, they reappear in the mailbox, with new ones added. Last night's photo? It was of me standing in the middle of Main Street again. Only this time, I wasn't alone. There was a second figure in the background, blurry, pale, and pointing right at me. It started the night I got lost driving home from the hardware store, on a road I'd taken 1,000 times. Corbin Hollow isn't big. There are 4 main roads and a few winding dirt lanes connecting the farms and houses. I've lived here 27 years and I could probably drive it blindfolded. That night, I almost did. My headlights flickered just past dusk, and for a second, everything in front of me vanished into pitch black. When they came back on, I was staring at a road sign I didn't recognize. It was old, rusted, with chipped white letters that read, Salt Hook Road. That road doesn't exist. I thought maybe I'd taken a wrong turn out of habit, but the trees looked familiar. Pine and ash lining both sides, the scent of cedar in the air. I turned the truck around. That's when I saw the sign again, same one. Salt Hook Road. I hadn't even passed an intersection. I got home eventually, after what felt like 45 minutes of looping through the same stretch. When I pulled into my driveway, I felt this low vibration in my chest, like I'd just come off a roller coaster I never boarded. I thought it was exhaustion, or maybe I just needed to lay off the caffeine. But the next day, it happened again. Different sign this time. I was heading to the post office when I saw the old wooden marker outside town that usually says, Welcome to Corbin Hollow, Pop 483. Only now, it read, You shouldn't have stayed. I slammed the brakes, got out of the car, and stared at it for a full minute. Just wood, letters carved in like someone had taken a knife to it. No paint, no glue, just deep grooves, fresh. I drove back with my neighbor Clay to show him, but when we returned, the sign was back to normal. He laughed it off, said I was stressed, asked if I'd been drinking. I hadn't, but maybe I wished I had. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've been documenting every sign in town, taking pictures, mapping locations. But every time I turn my back, something changes. Stop. Signs become stay. Yield becomes listen. Speed limits switch to don't slow down. One night, I passed a detour sign on Maple, and when I turned to double-check it in the rear view, it read, We see you. I stopped driving after dark after that. Problem is, it's not just road signs anymore. The hand-painted shop signs downtown flicker between normal and gibberish when no one's looking. One said, The dead remember. Another said, Exit denied. Last Tuesday, the church marquee, normally used for cheesy Bible verses, flashed this. Some roads only go deeper. I tried to record it, but the footage always glitches. Either the sign looks normal in the video or the frame freezes completely. Clay won't talk to me anymore. Neither will most folks. They stare too long, like they're waiting for me to say something I shouldn't. A few days ago, I passed the town limits and saw the main sign again. It didn't say, Welcome, this time. It said, You can't leave where you've never been. I haven't slept much since. Last night I followed a sign that shouldn't have been there. It pointed left off a road that doesn't have a left turn. But I turned anyway. It led to a trail I've never seen. The woods were too quiet. No crickets, no wind, just that same vibration in my chest like something humming through my bones. I followed it on foot, About 30 feet in, I saw a metal sign nailed to a tree. Same style, same rust. It said, "Your name was erased." I ran back to my truck and locked the doors, but the dashboard GPS had changed. No town name, no roads, just a blinking dot in the middle of a blank screen. Today, I went to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Mallory wasn't there. No deputies either. Just a sticky note on the door that said, "Turn around." I tried calling state police from the payphone. It only dialed one number. When the line clicked, I didn't hear a voice, just the sound of a pen scratching across paper over and over. That's when I realized. No one's really left town in a while. The delivery trucks haven't come. Mail stopped arriving 2 weeks ago, and when I check online, nothing loads except a single page that says, "Watch the signs." I'm writing this now with the windows boarded up. The street outside is full of signs again. They weren't there this morning. I count at least 12 of them. They all say different things. Too late. You looked away. One way out. Someone else is you. Salt hook never ends. And one, the one closest to my door, says, "Turn around," but I don't think it's talking to me anymore. I think it's talking to whoever's reading this. Because now, the walls are humming, and the sign outside just changed again. Now it says, "You're next."